Introduction to Daniel, Part 2. Articles of the house. This refers to the temple treasures in Solomon's temple. Not all the treasures were taken. Some were removed in 598 BC at the second conquest, and the rest in 586 BC, the third conquest. Jeremiah 27:19-20. Balthazar would use these temple treasures in a drunken orgy in Daniel chapter 5, bringing his defeat and God's wrath. Cyrus the Persian would restore the treasure to Judah after he defeats the Babylonians. Shinar, Babylon's old name. Genesis 11:2, 14:1, Isaiah 11:11, Zechariah 5:11. The location where all humanity settled following the flood, where the Tower of Babel was located. His god, the chief god of Babylon, was Marduk, also known as Bel, along with his consort Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. Nelson's Bible Dictionary describes the pantheon of Babylonian gods. The ancient Babylonian and Assyrian goddess Ishtar symbolized Mother Earth and the natural cycles of fertility on Earth. Ishtar was the daughter of Sin, the moon god. She was the goddess of love, so the practice of ritual prostitution became widespread in the fertility cult dictated to her name. Temples to Ishtar had many priestesses or sacred prostitutes who symbolically acted out the fertility rites of the cycle of nature. Ishtar has been identified with the Phoenician Astarte, the Semitic Ashtoreth, and the Sumerian Inanna. Strong similarities also exist between Ishtar and the Egyptian Isis, the Greek Aphrodite, and the Roman Venus. Associated with Ishtar was the young god Tammuz, Ezekiel 8:14, considered both divine and mortal. In Babylonian mythology, Tammuz died annually and was reborn year after year, representing the yearly cycle of the seasons and the crops. This pagan belief later was identified with the pagan gods Baal and Anat in Canaan. Another kind of god in both Babylonia and Assyria was a national god connected with politics. In Assyria it was Ashur, and in Babylonia it was Marduk, who became prominent at the time of Hammurabi, 1792 to 1750 BC. The ancient ideas about the ordering and governing of the universe were taken over by these two gods. Marduk, for example, achieved his prominence by victory over Tiamat, the goddess of the ocean. This cosmic conflict, described also in ancient Sumerian and Canaanite myths, was believed to have established order. God demonstrated his anger against Judah by allowing desecration of his temple to demonstrate their disobedience and displeasure, bringing his wrath on a deserving Babylon at a future date. Daniel and his friends' training. Daniel 1:3, the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles. Daniel 1:4, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. Daniel 1:5, and the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that At the end of that time, they might serve before the king. Now, from among those, the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave names. So he gave Daniel the name Belshazzar, Hananiah Shadrach, to Meshach Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. Ashpenaz, according to Walvoord's commentary on Daniel, Siegfried H. Horn reports the name Ashpenaz appears in the Aramaic incantation texts from Nippur as Shpenaz, and probably attested in the cuneiform records as Ashbazanda. Horn goes to identify him as the chief of King Nebuchadnezzar's eunuchs. According to Josephus, Daniel and his friends were made eunuchs in Babylon. The 4 young men were descendants of Judah and the nobility of Jerusalem. Josephus also reports the 4 were descendants of Zedekiah, Josiah's youngest son and Judah's last king. Since Zedekiah was 21 years of age in 598 BC, when he came to power and Daniel had already been in Babylon for 7 years, they were related in extended way to him. Now among these were 4 of the family of Zedekiah, the most excellent dispositions, one of whom was called Daniel, another was called Ananias, another Mishael, another Azarias. The king of Babylon changed their names and commanded that they should make use of their own other names. Daniel he called Belshazzar. The Hebrew word for eunuch is saris, and means court officer and castrate. Servants of the king were often castrated because they would interact with the king's wives and concubines. Isaiah foretold the offspring of Hezekiah would serve as eunuchs in Babylon. Some of the children taken in 605 BC by the Babylonians would serve several purposes. Number 1, they were hostages to keep the nobility from rebelling against Babylon. They would help Babylon administer the territory. And 3, they would help Babylon understand the customs and cultures of their new territory. Young men, the Hebrew word Yeled, translated young man, is most likely a male of about 14 to 15 years of age. These boys were the best Judah had to offer. They would help administer the Babylonian kingdom. They needed to understand Babylonian culture, traditions, and religion. The Babylonian culture was a very religious system, with the king acting out the role of Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, in the annual festival. In order to serve, they needed to be part of the Babylonian system. Teach. Daniel and his friends were to be taught the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The common language of the masses was Aramaic, but the priestly language was Akkadian. This was the more ancient language, much in the same way Latin became the language of the religious community in Europe. Daniel, like Moses, was educated in the learning and science of the land of his captivity. Daniel sets an example for believers. We can learn the teachings and philosophy of the world, but we don't have to accept them. Daniel's learning gave him the opportunity to be a witness for the true God. In the same way, God can use our service in this world as a way to reach those who are lost. Chaldeans, the word Kasdi, has a dual meaning. The word means the people of an area of Lower Mesopotamia in one sense, but in a second sense, the word by extension means wise men, such as astrologers. According to the International Bible Encyclopedia, Chaldeans in this respect means comprise the study of Sumerian, Akkadian, Aramaic, Chaldee, the other languages, as well as extensive literature written in them, historiography, as well as sciences of astronomy, mathematics, and medicine formed a large part of the specialist work.